The Backrooms Stories. Welcome to Mr. Horror Tale, where we tell scary stories that really happened. In this video, we will explore one of the biggest urban legends on the internet, the Backrooms. There are many ways to access the almost infinite levels of the Backrooms. Some may access with a bit of luck, others may have done it by sheer insistence, or others simply stumbled upon this strange dimension. Regardless of how these three people entered the Backrooms, they all have one thing in common. They all regret it. To ensure you don't miss out on other horror contents, remember to subscribe to the channel and activate the notification bell. Story 1. Level 178. My name is Aiden, and I used to be obsessed with the Backrooms. Nowadays, anyone who loves urban legends on the internet knows what a backroom is, but it wasn't always like that. Back in the day, when they were not popular at all, I was one of the people most obsessed with this urban legend. I knew every backroom level inside out, and there was nothing else I wanted to do more than explore my favorite level. Today, I completely stopped consuming any backroom content. Do you know why? Because if the experience I had that day taught me anything, it's that backrooms are not only real, but it's impossible to understand their rules. We are mere humans trying to create logic out of something beyond human comprehension. And like all curious humans playing beyond their limits, I would learn this lesson in the worst possible way. I will tell you how it all started. Remember when I just told you that I always had a dream of exploring my favorite backroom level? Well, that was level 178. This level is known as the Japanese level. The legends of that country speak of this level as a shrine. A level oriented in a traditional Japanese house where travelers can find some peace. Many people get trapped in this level forever, not because it has a death trap, or because there are monsters to lock them in, no, but because of its beauty and tranquility. In this level, there is nothing negative. No monsters, no entities, no labyrinths, just peace. Now, the way to access this level, it was somewhat complicated. You had to previously pass through many other levels. And to be honest, the more I knew about them, the less I wanted to take the risk of entering. I started to think too much about level 178. It had become an obsession. And this was a dangerous thing. Not many people know it, but one of the easiest ways to enter the Backrooms was to be thinking about them at bedtime. That's why, always when I went to sleep, I thought about something else. But one day I couldn't do it. That day I had too much to drink. I had come back from a bar with my friends, and I instantly fell into bed. You know. At that moment I was thinking about the Backrooms, and how nice it would be to be having a drink on level 178. Without realizing it, my eyes started to get heavy, and I completely forgot the consequences of not clearing my mind. From one moment to the next, I closed my eyes, and when I opened them, I was no longer at home, although I was not in the first level of the Backrooms either. I was on level 178. At that moment, it was as if all the alcohol had left my bloodstream. I was completely sober, aware of where I had gotten to. I remember being happy, but also very confused. It was impossible to have gone straight to level 178. All the rules say that when you fall asleep, you start on level 1 of the backroom. That level full of yellow offices and the smell of wet carpets. I started to explore the place, and yes, it was level 178. Just as it was always described. The place smelled of bamboo sticks, and it was really hypnotic. You could feel the peace in every step I took through the infinite Japanese house. Excited, I started to explore the whole place. I wanted to live the full experience of level 178 before I could wake up. Once I finished with the house, I headed to one of the most striking areas of the level, the hot springs. You don't know how good I felt in them. It was as if I wasn't in a dream, as if I could enjoy them to the fullest. I relaxed in the middle of the water and closed my eyes again, hoping to stay a long time before I woke up. I didn't know what kind of blessing took me directly to level 178, but I was grateful. Unfortunately, that same blessing would soon turn into a nightmare. As I opened my eyes to take in the beautiful view of the hot springs, I looked down and noticed something a few feet away peering out of the water. It was eyes. A head was slowly coming out of the water and eyes were peering out of it, staring at me as they slowly approached me, like a crocodile cornering its prey. I wanted to get out of the water, but I could not. This strange being was in the way, forcing me deeper and deeper into the hot springs to get away from whatever was chasing me. How was this possible? Level 178 was supposed to be calm. No entity is ever recorded to reach that level. I was supposed to be alone. In desperation, I kept swimming and swimming until suddenly, everything changed. I was back in the Japanese house, but something had changed. Everything was upside down. I knew where I was. This was level 178.1, which was the same as the previous one, but in reverse. I started to walk looking for the exit. I didn't want to be here anymore. I was terrified. The peaceful atmosphere became a horrifying and suffocating place. All the nice Japanese furniture started to make me claustrophobic. Suddenly, I heard a noise behind me. It was that being again. For the first time, I saw him standing behind me with his whole body. It was a kind of shadow of almost 2 meters. Horrible hands were coming out of his whole body and his head. His head had a kind of mask with a big smile on it. I was very scared. I didn't know what it was, but I knew it was following me. It followed me from the hot springs, and now it was here, ready to corner me. I began to run quickly as the hideous monster moved towards me, absorbing everything in its path. Furniture, chairs, everything moved towards its body as if absorbed. No matter the size, no matter the weight, everything was devoured by this horrendous being. Suddenly, I noticed that it was getting harder and harder to escape. The being was going faster and faster towards me. No, it was going at the same speed. It was me who was going slower. I noticed that my feet began to fail me, while a strange wind without strength seemed to suck me slowly toward the center of the monster. It was getting worse and worse. I felt weaker and weaker, and my feet became unfamiliar parts of my body. In just a few seconds, my legs already seemed to be punishing me for trying to escape, as if they wanted to stop on their own and be absorbed by the horrendous monster. My whole body began to cramp violently, and the pain flowed at great speed through my every nerve. But I knew I couldn't stop. I had to run, and keep running. Even if my body revealed itself and prevented me from doing so, something inside me knew that if that being reached me, a fate far worse than death would await me. But anyway, no matter how hard I tried, everything had a limit. And I had reached mine. After a few minutes, my body had stopped responding. And although in my head I was still running, my body had stopped completely. I began to scream in desperation as the strange being slowly absorbed me and pulled me into his body. All his hands coming out of the darkness scratched me and grabbed my face to get me inside faster. In those few seconds, I felt despair, fear, horror, but more than anything, emptiness. I felt an absolute emptiness. Everything stopped making sense, and I was ready to cease to exist when suddenly, it was all over. When I opened my eyes, my sister and my parents were beside me in my bed, worried. My face was soaked, and my mom had an empty glass of water in her hands. My sister told me I was screaming my head off, and I woke up everyone in the house. No matter how hard they shook me, they couldn't wake me up. My only reaction was to cry and hug them. I was awake. It was all over. But what I experienced seconds before was not a dream. It was real. After that, I stopped thinking about the backrooms. My life took a 180 degrees turn, and I decided I had to stop playing with the unknown. I'm not going to lie. Even though I never went back to the backrooms, there were repercussions. Since that day, I feel much weaker. I get sick a lot more often, and my body doesn't respond like it used to. It's as if being inside that being for a few seconds has changed me forever, making my body weak and sensitive. You know, I can't complain. After that night I lived in that Japanese house. Whatever fate my physical body had suffered was better than what would have happened if my family had not woken me up. Story 2. Level 1. How many of you know what backrooms are? I imagine most of you do, right? In the darkest era of the internet, few knew about backrooms or any of the legends that came out of 4chan or Reddit. Today, all levels of backrooms are already known. All Slender Man stories have been told, and even Jeff the Killer is a public image that almost everyone knows. All this knowledge of these stories makes them less scary, and by being less scary, people are less interested. But back in the day, when the maps were not yet drawn, this made us very afraid. And not only afraid, but also curious. This same curiosity made us want to know how true the stories were. And you know, at least the story of the backrooms is very real. I know that not many will believe the story I'm about to tell you, and that's fine. I wouldn't believe it either. I don't mind if this story gets lost among the thousands of made-up stories about the backrooms. To be honest, I'm just telling this story to get it out of my system, so that someone who reads it will be interested, and not get worried looks from my family or ridicule from my friends. This is the story of how in the darkest time of the internet, I was a humble content creator who, out of a desire to become famous, came across something that no human should have ever come across. I'll be quite blunt. At the time, I was a little afraid, and a little distrustful of internet legends. But deep inside me, I knew it was a lie. The desire to be famous and recognized by the few viewers that YouTube had at that time made me forget that little fear and explore some urban legends. At that time, Slender Man was the most popular. All content creators were making content on this topic, so it was no longer something innovative and different. I didn't want to gain a few followers. I wanted to reinvent a trend. I wanted to be the most famous YouTuber on the whole platform. And that's when I discovered an unexplored gold mine, the backrooms. I'm not going to bore you with all the explanations of what they are and how they work, as you probably already know. I'll just tell you that I was obsessed with getting to know the first level of the backrooms, and then coming back alive to witness what I saw. Yes, obviously I could fake the testimony, but I was really committed to this. I wanted to be as detailed as possible. I wanted to see, hear, and feel things that I couldn't explain if they were a lie. I really wanted to get into the backrooms. I'll spare you the details of what comes next. If you want to try to get into the backrooms, go find it on your own. To tell you the truth, I don't contribute to more people going in there, not after what I went through. I'll just tell you that after following the rules I had to follow, I opened my eyes and realized something. I was inside the backrooms. At that moment, only level 1 was known. The backroom known for being endless offices with yellow upholstery. When I woke up, I was completely shocked. I couldn't believe I had made it into the backrooms. I thought it was a dream, but the whole idea vanished as soon as I took a breath and smelled the characteristic smell of wet carpet. When we dream, we can't smell anything. This really meant I was in the backrooms. I began to explore the place, trying to memorize as much as I could, and then make a video. This was an in and out situation. I wasn't going to stay a second longer than necessary. I had to find the exit as fast as I could. I quickly checked everything I could and started looking for the exit. If I knew what I was doing, it wouldn't be too difficult. I was exploring through the exit until I saw a silhouette in one of the corridors. This was a red flag. I knew I didn't have to interact or get close to anything that might cross my path while I was in the backrooms. The only problem was that I had no other choice. The silhouette was standing in the way of the only path I considered right. I had to take the risk and walk past it. As far as I could see, she was standing still. I walked nervously and got a few steps behind her. At that moment, I realized something. That wasn't just any silhouette. It was my silhouette. The clothes and the back of the neck were exactly the same as mine. Curiosity got the better of me, and now I not only wanted to walk past the silhouette, but I also wanted to see if it looked exactly like my own. I walked nervously, circling around the figure that was standing still. But when I passed by it, something completely unexpected happened. This being, whatever it was, could look like me from behind, but it was totally different from the front. When I looked at it from the front, its face was nothing but a huge hole with teeth all around. I didn't have time to react when to turn my surprise and confusion into horror. This being emitted a horrible scream and rushed towards me. Once on the ground, I fought for my life while the monster identical to me tried to sink its teeth all over my head. With a fierce push, I managed to get it away from me temporarily, so I could start running and get away from it. But the worst was not over yet. At that moment, while I was running, I realized that there were many more beings identical to the one that had just attacked me. They all had my body and my clothes, but they also all had that huge hole full of fangs where the face should be. I ran as if there was no tomorrow towards the exit door, which was becoming clearer and clearer in the distance. Some of the creatures were watching me, and others were chasing me. But they were all equally terrifying. When there were already a few chasing me, I managed to open the red door and escape from the place. As soon as I crossed the red door, I felt like I was going through a lot of tunnels. And out of nowhere, I ended up in a dirty ditch a few blocks away from my house. I was safe. Once I returned home, I uploaded a video telling everything I experienced. Nobody cared. Nobody seemed to be surprised or to believe me at all. At first, I was discouraged, so I left YouTube. Today, I'm glad that happened. Who knows how far I would have gone if that video had done well. Who knows what risks I would have taken by wanting to make a similar video to attract people. Honestly, I'm glad you heard my story, and don't try to do anything like that ever. The Backrooms are a very dangerous place that is not meant for human sight. The beings that live there know that, and they will definitely punish you for breaking that threshold that you should never break. Story 3, Level 42. The Backrooms. I'll be honest, unlike all those psychopaths obsessed with backrooms, I must be one of the few people who ended up in one by accident. I'm not a creepypasta person. I'm not a person who's into urban legends, and I'm not even a person who uses the computer too much. Misfortune always knocks on the door when you least expect it. And although there are some psychopaths who spend their whole lives looking for backrooms without success, I found it by mere chance. Once I was in there. Well, I will tell you what happened to me, although I must anticipate something. In that place, things happened that couldn't happen even in your wildest nightmare. And the creatures that lived there, well, I can only tell you that they are not friendly at all. Well, let's start from the beginning. That day I was on the university campus, and a few hours later I had to take a difficult algebra exam. So I was between scared and nervous. I hadn't studied enough. So the night before I had been up all night without sleep, taking energizers and eating chocolate to stay awake. Once the sun came up, and it was daylight, I thought about stopping studying and taking an hour's nap, but that would be a terrible idea. I still had a lot of studying to do, and I couldn't let all that sacrifice be in vain. I decided to take a short break and go for a walk outside the campus, trying to remember all the sample tests I had read. When it all happened, I was in the parking lot, kind of lost, trying not to fall asleep. My eyes kept wandering, and several times I was close to falling asleep, but I couldn't afford it. I kept walking and walking, going to where I remembered the exit was. At no time did I stop looking at my leaves, until something attracted my curiosity. How long had I been walking in this parking lot? I raised my head, and as soon as I saw what was in front of me, I dropped all my points to the ground. I was still in a parking lot, but this wasn't the same parking lot I was in a few minutes before. Everything was darker. The colors were grayer, and it was much more spacious. Everything was very strange, but you know what confused me the most? The size of the place. It was unbelievably big. It seemed to have no beginning and no end. It was as if the small parking lot of the campus had become sprawling and seemed to have no end. I raised my eyes and walked around this new area in confusion. There was no car, and I quickly began to realize that the place was very battered. It was completely abandoned. I kept walking more and more around the place, looking for any door or any exit, but there was no wall either. The questions began to arise little by little. Where was I? Was this somewhere in the university that I had wandered into by mistake? Why would there be such a big parking lot here? And at that moment, I realized something much worse. If there is no wall nearby, how did I access this place? It was at that moment that I understood that none of this was normal, and no law of logic applied here. My only reaction was to panic and run in desperation. I might not understand the nature of this place, but I knew that, no matter what, I had to escape from here. No matter how hard I ran, the place seemed to have no beginning and no end. It was as if I was trapped in an endless maze. My legs started to give out, and I was still trapped here. I was desperate and hopeless, coming to terms with this new reality, when I realized that I was not alone. In the distance, someone was walking towards me. I put on a big smile and ran in the direction of this person, but hope was short-lived. The closer I got to this being, the more I realized that something was wrong with him. At first, it was just the way he was walking, as if from side to side, trying to keep his body in balance. When I got closer, terror took over my whole body. It was at that moment that I wished I was alone once again. That being might have been in human form, but it was definitely not a human. At first glance, it looked like a human, but a human without skin. It was a man with all the flesh of his body exposed. I could see how all the veins ran through his body. The veins seemed to be swollen, and every step this being took left traces of blood all around him. He seemed to be in great suffering, as if his very existence was based on the purest and most intense pain that no human should ever suffer. And it made sense. I couldn't imagine what it was like to walk around with all my nerves exposed. Unfortunately, I had no time to feel pity for this being. As soon as he got a few meters away from me, he froze completely, as if he was dead, but standing still. I stared at him for a few seconds, trying to understand what his reaction would be. Would he be afraid of me? Would he ignore me? Neither of these two things happened because out of nowhere, the horrendous monster increased its speed and ran towards me, giving a scream of battle and pain that would haunt me for the rest of my life. All I could do was run. I ran as fast as I could in the opposite direction of this horrendous being. I could hear behind me as the monster kept running. As it chased me, other details about it became very evident. It had no arms, or rather, it had them, but inside the flesh itself. For a brief moment I thought about staying still and waiting for it. I thought about fighting it. What could a being with all the exposed nerves do to me without arms? That idea didn't really last long. I didn't know what I was facing. And to tell the truth, you have no idea how terrifying and intense its screams were. They were screaming capable of reducing the bravest man to a 10-year-old child. I kept running. My legs were getting tired again. I couldn't run anymore. But at the moment when I was considering taking my chances and fighting with this being, I saw in front of me something that caught my attention. There was a red door on one of the pillars of the parking lot. That door didn't seem to lead to anything because, behind the pillar, the parking lot continued. But I had to risk it. It was the only door I had seen in hours of walking around this place. As I turned around, I saw that the monster was getting closer and closer. Its screams of desperation sounded closer and closer and were more and more violent, as if in anticipation of catching me. I used what little energy I had left to get to the door, and once I opened it and got inside, it was all over. The monster was no longer chasing me, and when I turned around, the door was gone. I looked around me one more time. I was in the university parking lot. I didn't have my points anymore, but I was no longer in that strange parking lot, nor did I see any way back. That day, I went back to my room and took a shower, absolutely traumatized and terrified by the experience I had just had. I didn't take my algebra test soon after I dropped out of college. I still have nightmares of what I experienced in that parking lot. Soon after, I decided to try to do some research on the internet to understand what I had experienced. I thought I was not going to find any answers, but to my complete dismay, I did. I recognized that place from the pictures on the internet. I had been trapped in a backroom, specifically on level 22. According to this, it happened because I had crossed a portal in the wall, or from falling asleep while I was studying. I didn't know how I got there, but to tell you the truth, I didn't do much more research. As I told you at the beginning, I'm not interested in backrooms or any internet legend, whether it's true or not. I just want to have a simple and quiet life. The only thing I can do now is to forget and remember this anecdote as little as possible. Thanks for watching. If you like the stories, remember to subscribe and activate the notification bell so you don't miss any other true disturbing stories. See you next video.